If you don't know who won World War II and following our series in real time, beware, this video contains some spoilers.
February 1945. The Soviets have advanced into Slovakia and Hungary, and together with Tito's army in Yugoslavia.
On the Southern Front, Army Group C blocks access to northern Italy between the Adriatic and the Ligurian Gulf.
Fortress Europe has become untenable, but the German Wehrmacht is still fighting all around, in Germany, in Norway, Bohemia, Moravia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, and Italy.
All signs suggest that the Nazi leadership and the Führer are determined to fight stubbornly on German soil until the very end, until all forces are exhausted, all cities are reduced to rubble, and all industry is destroyed in giant balls of fire.
This is Spies and Ties. I'm Astrid Deinhard.
And I'm Anna Deinhard.
Hello, darlings.
For the final battle, the foothills of the Alps in Austria and Italy are of utmost importance. An area surrounded by mountains can be held as a refuge for a long time. Austria has not only become an important area for the relocation and development of the war industry, but also receiving area for the evacuation of important people, archives and treasures.
The military expansion of this area was already insufficient at the beginning of 1945, but even without extensive fortifications, the Alps are by far the strongest defensive battlefront. The southern area of the Alpine Wall, located in northern Italy, has to be kept in hand as long as possible.
Secret negotiations now begin that will send shockwaves among both allies and enemies. When Stalin learns of the negotiations, he fears that this is part of a separate agreement with the Third Reich and a possible alliance against the USSR.
For the German Generalstab, it is a tightrope walk between politics and ethics, disobeying orders to scorch the earth in Italy. What is the price of peace? What happens afterwards? Making deals with the enemy? Will I be hanged or praised?
The men involved in Operation Sunrise might already be asking themselves these or similar questions.
Questions worth thinking about, because the surrender of the German Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS in Italy will be one of the most important and far-reaching events of the final phase of the Second World War.
The location, Switzerland, a neutral country or a country that tries very hard to come across as neutral, is where these negotiations will take place, although some preludes will also occur in Italy.
The man involved from Switzerland, Dr. Max Husmann, founder and owner of the Montana Institute, a prestigious boarding school still in operation to this day, and in the context of Operation Sunrise, an intermediary and broker of sorts.
Not himself involved in the military or espionage work, this man finds himself at the center of some of the most important negotiations of this war, simply by knowing the right people at the right time.
For example, Max Weibel, by the beginning of the war officer in the Swiss Army, later major, who throughout the course of the war rose to be chief of the Swiss Army Intelligence Services for all Axis powers and territories.
By 1944, his network of agents would stretch throughout Germany, with one agent even penetrating the Führerbunker. Himself a man who at times was at odds with the proclaimed neutrality of his own country, and hence the perfect man for the job. His motivation behind the negotiations was simple: to end the war.
From Italy, Luigi Barilli, an Italian nobleman, industrialist, and according to contemporary historians, a double agent working for the OSS, the Office of Strategic Service, the American Military Intelligence Service, and the German SD.
His motivations behind Operation Sunrise were twofold. First, to keep the Italian Communist Party from seizing control over Italy, and second, the protection of his vast personal assets situated in northern Italy.
From Germany, Guido Zimmer, a mid-level SS officer, member of the SD since 1936, and handler of Luigi Barilli. He, along with similar-minded individuals from the RSHD, Reichssicherheitshauptamt, have been working towards suing for peace with the Western Allies since 1944.
This way, maybe some sort of alliance against the Soviets could be formed, and Germany would have peace, at least on one front.
Karl Wolff, a right-hand man of Himmler and höchster SS and Polizeiführer in Italy. He personally oversaw Operation Eiche, the thrilling covert operation by German paratroopers to free Mussolini and reinstall him in a fake government. Since then, he has also played important roles in undermining and derailing the proposed abduction of Pope Pius XII, recruiting Italian forced laborers for the German armaments industries, and organizing and supervising the fight against the Resistenza, the Italian partisans.
His motivation is rather simple. The writing is on the wall. Germany is looking in the face of total and utter defeat. Even for an indoctrinated SS officer like him, who had gone above and beyond in service of what he truly believed to be a prosperous future for Germany, the war is lost, and the 1,000-year Reich a mere 12-year catastrophic experiment.
Zimmer and Wolff know that if they are captured by the Americans, or worse, the Soviets, all that is waiting for them is the noose. This operation is what they hope might save them from that fate.
Finally, from the United States of America, the head of the OSS in Switzerland, Alan Welch Dulles. He is to be representative of the Western Allies in the upcoming negotiations, with the authority to make some promises and initiate adequate steps on the American side.
His motivations are fairly straightforward: save the life of American soldiers and win the war faster to keep as much territory as possible out of Soviets' control.
While the motivations behind Operation Sunrise might be rather simple, the operation itself is definitely not.
Everything starts with a meeting between Barilli and Zimmer. Barilli was invited to my place for a meal today to discuss quietly once more the Swiss trip, which he is to begin on the 20th of February, to set forth our common view of the communist danger. He should further intimate that Zimmer, without the knowledge of his office, belongs to some circle of influential people who are pursuing a definite political course. One of these influential people in the know is Karl Wolff, and before Barilli leaves for Switzerland, Zimmer will put the two into contact. But how does he get from Italy to Switzerland? Not easy.
That's a problem his business partner and friend, Dr. Max Hussmann, can help solve. You see, in 1939, Barilli puts his nephew in the school led by Hussmann, and from their letters, it is apparent that the two have become friends.
While it truly is a challenge to be granted a Swiss visa as an Italian in 1945, it is not impossible. The only thing you need is a sponsor, someone who vouches for you in the same spirit, puts down 10,000 Swiss francs, somewhere north of $45,000 today, as collateral for your 8-day stay. Okay, the Italian nobleman asked just that of his friend because of important matters which cannot be discussed over the phone.
Hussmann agrees, and towards the end of February 1945, they meet in the Institute Montana. There, the Italian puts forward the most recent orders from Berlin as the straw that broke the camel's back, and convinced some of the German top brass to secretly broker peace with the Western Allies.
Heeresgruppe C is supposed to leave nothing but scorched earth on their way to the natural fortress of the Alps.
All cultural treasures are supposed to be destroyed, all bridges, train tracks, harbors and other important infrastructure demolished, all major cities razed to their foundations, and all prisoners liquidated. Parilli stresses that this could be averted if action is taken now.
In the evening of February the 21st, Uchman picks up the phone and dials a number.
When the phone rings on the other end, Max Weibel, on a skiing holiday with his family in St. Moritz, answers. Yep, some people still went on holiday during World War II.
Yeah, they did. Anyway, Uchman conveys an urgency to meet, and evidently Weibel takes this very seriously as he immediately suspends his holiday and races to Uchman.
The next day, the first meeting between Weibel, Uchman and Parilli takes place. But the proposal to broker peace between the Western Allies and Germany poses a problem for Weibel.
If he is to take the role of an active broker of peace, his superiors could see this as a violation of Switzerland's neutrality, of course. Hence, for now, he keeps developments to himself. Weibel, in turn, ropes in the next co-conspirator, his acquaintance Alan Dulles.
At first, Dulles remains skeptical of what Parilli has to say. After all, Zimmer, the German who had engineered this meeting, means little as a mere mid-level officer. He requires proof of further, higher-up co-conspirators to pursue the scheme fully and with confidence. A preliminary meeting takes place on March 3rd to pave the way for a future visit by Wolff to Switzerland.
It works, and 3 days later, Dulles and Wolff meet for the first time and begin discussions in earnest. More meetings in and trips to Switzerland follow.
But by now, some things have changed. First, the situation for Wolff and his German co-conspirators become more serious. Two things happen in quick succession which endanger the entire operation. Smiling Albert Kesselring, in charge of Italy, who had signaled limited support for the scheme, is ordered back to Berlin and is replaced by Heinrich von Wittinghoff. Before leaving, he impresses on the new commander that an end to the fighting will not be considered at all as long as the Führer is still alive.
Convincing his replacement to go along with the scheme will be time-intensive at best and could be dangerous at worst. And even then, if the new general could be convinced of the merits of Operation Sunrise, he could refuse to surrender while Hitler remains alive, or only agree to move the troops of Army Group C from Italy to Austria, something which the Americans are vehemently opposed to.
Moreover, Wolff is not the only high-level German official opening diplomatic lines to the enemy without any proper instructions or permission from Berlin. In his tense and wary atmosphere, the chief of the Sicherheitspolizei in Italy finds Wolff's trips to Switzerland suspicious and promptly reports him to the Gestapo.
As a result, Wolff gets summoned to Berlin, to Hitler himself. He must know what is on the line, as he takes a note with him which pleads for leniency for his family should anything happen to him. He is interrogated for 14 hours straight in the Führer bunker.
Second, things are also slowing down on the Allied side. The way Operation Sunrise is handled internally between Roosevelt, Churchill and Stalin highlights the tension which will eventually give rise to the Cold War. Similar to the Germans and Parilli, the Allies are worried that the Soviets might gain control over Italy before the war in Europe is over.
Given the, at the time, secret war goal of the Soviets to capture northern Italy before the Americans, these fears seem plausible.
While the Brits and the Americans inform the Soviets about the negotiations, they refuse any official Soviet participation in them. As you can imagine, this leads to a lot of bad air between the Allies, or as Vyacheslav Molotov, the Soviet foreign minister, puts it.
For 2 weeks in Bern, behind the back of the Soviet Union, negotiations between the German military command and the American and British command have been conducted. The Soviet government considers this absolutely inadmissible. Or as Stalin would later write to Roosevelt,
You are quite right in saying, with reference to the talks between the Anglo-American and German commands in Bern or elsewhere, that the matter now stands in an atmosphere of regrettable apprehension and mistrust.
Roosevelt, after finishing his final reply in this exchange of letters, complains of a headache. And hours later, drops dead. But the misgivings about Sunrise do not die with him.
When Vice President Harry Truman takes office, he immediately instructs Dulles to suspend any negotiations with the enemy.
Disappointing for Churchill, who believes that the US misgivings would end with the death of Roosevelt.
At the moment, it looks more like Operation Sunset than Operation Sunrise.
Yes, but while these developments slow the progress of the negotiations, they do not lead to their complete failure. According to Wolff's own account, he can convince the Führer that his visits to Switzerland serve the interests of the Reich and takes the last plane to leave Berlin before the Allied advance locks down any air travel, a point at which Himmler also personally prohibits any further travels to Switzerland. For now, Wolff has barely managed to return from the Dragon's Den.
On the American side, Dulles now faces a presidential order to cease negotiations, which Dulles believes could save lives and protect American interest. Dulles' solution is quite straightforward. He simply pretends he didn't get the orders.
At least, according to some sources. Others claim that the orders from Truman were withdrawn just days after they had first been issued.
In any case, by the middle of April, Wolff is back in Italy, and he and Dulles can finally get around to finishing what they had started a month earlier. But there are further minor roadblocks yet to come.
Some of these minor roadblocks include one proposed meeting place being shelled, so minor seems to be quite dependent on perspective here.
Anyhow, the last remaining proper obstacles to the success of the scheme are Kesselring and Wittinghoff, who both, up until now, have refused to play ball.
Especially Wittinghoff, who is opposed to any premature surrender, as he is keenly aware of the Durchstoßlegende and does not want to be blamed for any new stab in the back. However, by the end of April, the military situation forces their hands.
Finally, on April 27th, Dulles is instructed by Allied command to send 2 German representatives to the Allied headquarters in Caserta.
These 2 Germans, Viktor von Schweinitz, Oberleutnant der Generalstabsoffizier der Heeresgruppe C, sent on behalf of Wittinghoff, as well as SS Sturmbannführer Eugen Wenner, sent on behalf of Wolff, finally sign the unconditional surrender of Heeresgruppe C at 2 p.m. on April the 29th. The armistice comes into effect on May the 2nd at exactly 12 p.m. GMT. Okay, this is a partial armistice, a full 6 days before the Germans actually capitulate. But does it really achieve anything?
Well, there is some disagreement among historians. Some say it saved a very limited number of mostly Italian and German lives, whereas others suggest it shortened the war by 6 to 8 weeks. We'll let Indy show you what is most likely in his coverage 10 weeks from now.
Will you, Indy?
You bet your sweet ass I will.
There you go. In either case, it did save human lives. It also potentially spared the whole north of Italy from being turned into a desolated wasteland. It conserved cultural treasures for posterity, and it was the only capitulation to occur before Hitler's suicide on April 30th. As such, it presents itself as a huge success for the Swiss and American intelligence agencies involved.
But what about the co-conspirators involved?
Well, for the Germans, Zimmer and Wolff, they got what they wanted, amnesty. At least, sort of. You must keep in mind that while these people may have helped in orchestrating the end of the war in Italy previously, they had committed monstrous acts, as both were heavily involved in the Holocaust.
To illustrate, Wolff once expressed in a letter to a colleague in 1942 his special joy that now 5,000 of the chosen people are going to Treblinka every day.
So sad. But in the immediate aftermath of the war, both of the men are largely left alone. The OSS speaks up for both of them, and consequently Zimmer is off the hook, and Wolff only has to spend 4 years in jail before being released in 1949. He also makes an appearance in Nuremberg, although only as a witness rather than a defendant. His deeds, especially in connection to the Holocaust, will catch up to him, however. And in the early 60s, he will be sentenced as an accomplice to murder in more than 300,000 counts. Zimmer, on the other hand, gets away scotch-free.
Weibel, out of all people, also gets in trouble. The Swiss government and his superiors think that his actions violated the Swiss commitment towards neutrality and allege that he acted without informing his superiors, which he had, although only in the very beginning of Operation Sunrise. He was officially reprimanded by the army, and the publication of his account of the events was banned in 1947.
Dulles, on the other hand, was able to add another great feat to his illustrious wartime career for the OSS. This, together with earlier achievements, eventually led him to become chief of the CIA until the unsuccessful invasion of Cuba, the Bay of Pigs fiasco. If you want to know why Dulles would end up losing his job, check out our whole series on the Cuba crisis. You'll see it later.
And it's very good. Husman and Parilli also get what they want as the war ends, which is a blessing for the Doctors' International Boarding School and the north of Italy, where most of Parilli's assets are located, remaining largely intact.
Sometimes, as we have learned today, to make a difference, you do not have to be the top dog in charge, as Dulles, Parilli and Dr. Husman show us. Also, saving one's own skin as motivation can at times lead you to do something that is generally a better outcome for everyone. If that truly absolves you from previous misdeeds, in this case atrocities and crimes against humanity, is an altogether separate issue though.
In the end, the group of individuals, even when the odds were firmly stacked against them, managed to orchestrate a partial surrender of the Wehrmacht, which signaled to all, also those left fighting fanatically in Germany, that soon there would once again be peace in Europe.
To see how this fits together with the war goals of the different sides in February 1945, click here to see Indy's and Sparty's very detailed explanation of that.
It is the participation of the Time Ghost Army that allows us to dive into the lesser-known aspects of history. Join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or at patreon.com. Subscribe and ring that bell.
And we will see you next time. Alex.